I have trouble going upstairs. I cannot exercise. I feel fatigue all the time. I just must be getting older. Welcome to your daily health briefing. I'm Dr. Albert Takem. This show is here to help you navigate the complex U.S. medical system, one step at a time. Whether you are decoding a new diagnosis, fighting for a referral, or just trying to stay informed, you are in the right place. Let's get into the science. Patients tell me all the time, "Doctor, I have trouble going upstairs. I cannot exercise. I feel fatigue all the time. I just must be getting older." Now, Dr. Khan, when does shortness of breath mean something more than getting older?
Absolutely. So it can be confusing sometimes, right? So because sometimes we're just out of shape, and we don't move at the same. We're just getting a little bit older, and we can't move at the same speed, or we don't have the energy we once used to, and that sometimes can be normal or part of life. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem. But when your symptoms are worsening or out of proportion, it sometimes can be time to tell your doctor about it, so that we do a checkup to see where this is all coming from.
Okay. Let me tell you a story of a patient that I had. This guy he's 52 years old, and he was having trouble breathing over a period of time. So it lasted about, at least until he came to see me. It had been going on for about 8 months.
Okay.
And he realized that he started parking closer to buildings, because he had trouble walking, long distances, right? He started avoiding stairs. And of course, because he had trouble going upstairs. And he told me that many times he would limit even going down to his basement to watch his TV in his man cave because it would involve him walking back upstairs. And turns out, once he went and saw a pulmonologist and they had pulmonary function test done, turns out he had COPD. And he was shocked by this, A, because he didn't know he had COPD, of course, and B, because he was not a smoker. Why was he so befuddled by this diagnosis?
That's a great case, actually. And that sort of also answers some of the initial questions we were talking about, where when do you know it's a problem? And this is sort of the perfect sort of example of that, where when you find yourself changing your life around to not have to go up the stairs or to avoid, having to walk further because the symptom makes you feel a certain way, or you're anxious about it, or you're worried about it, that definitely means you need to go see your doctor, right? But then more so him, that patient being shocked about it, that's, not a surprise, because generally sometimes, 7 out of 10 people may not know that they have COPD. It's one of those things that becomes chronic and they're just dealing with it day to day. And then the other big part of it being where sometimes up to about 30% of people who have never been smokers can get COPD. It can be a shocker or a surprise to the patients.
Okay. And so how do we go about testing for this? Like, what do we do for the patient if they're complaining of shortness of breath and they don't know if it's a problem of aging or it's a disease?
So what you would want to do is, as you mentioned, you would want to see your primary care or get a referral for a pulmonologist, because what you really need is what they call PFTs. PFT stands for pulmonary function tests. And so it's sort of a umbrella term, and it encompasses a series of different lung tests to see what exactly is sort of going on. So there's something called spirometry. There's something called your FEV1 FVC ratio. There's something called DLCO. So we're looking at a lot of different things, like how much air you can pull into your lungs, how much can you blow out, how's the oxygen going into your lungs and into your body. Those kinds of things can give us a lot more information on what's going on with the lungs. And so think of the PFTs as sort of like a stress test. People more so know what a stress test is when it comes to your heart. This is sort of a stress test, but for your lungs.
Okay. So what are the consequences of ignoring the shortness of breath? If somebody ignored them, not necessarily ignored them, but didn't seek the appropriate care when they happened,
Absolutely.
like my patient, what are the consequences?
When you're having shortness of breath, it could be potentially a lot of different scenarios here. When you have shortness of breath, it could be coming from the heart. It could be heart failure or a missed heart attack. It could be something like asthma. It could be something like COPD, or like you mentioned, or sleep apnea, or it could be something like fibrosis and a decline overall in your lungs, So in order to get a diagnosis of what exactly is going on, it's a constellation of tests that your doctor does with you, ranging from blood tests to sometimes imaging studies like x-rays and CT scans. And then, like we were talking about, the PFTs, because that's what really tells us about what the lungs are doing and if there's an inherent lung problem going on.
Okay. So let's touch a little bit into the science. Why do people actually experience shortness of breath? What is going on in the body that makes somebody short of breath?
This is a loaded question as well, because it also depends on what is the cause of this, right? Why is someone having shortness of breath? Well, sometimes your heart's not pumping at its optimum level. And now all that fluid is backing up and leaking into your lungs, and your lungs just can't deal with that, right? Or sometimes in a condition like COPD we were talking about, which can be either like emphysema or chronic bronchitis. So in emphysema, you have damage to your actual air sacs that you breathe with. So now you can't breathe right. So you can have shortness of breath from that. Or in terms of like chronic bronchitis, your lungs are full of mucus, and now you can't really breathe well because of that. Similarly, like if it's a sleep apnea issue, and you're just not breathing and your oxygen is dropping, right? And so your body's starving for oxygen. So like it could be a lot of different things. Sometimes being obese or out of shape, you'll get hypoventilation syndromes where you can't take deep breaths, or you on average don't take deep breaths. So the causes are many. So the next step is, if you're experiencing something like this and it's been over a certain amount of time, you don't have any kind of answers, you definitely want to start following up with your doctor.
So as you mentioned earlier, the pulmonary function test. So basically the PFT is, so for high blood pressure, we've got the blood pressure curve. For heart failure, we've got an echocardiogram. So the PFT is basically one of these tests, but for lung function.
For the lungs, exactly.
Those have a good idea of how your lungs are working.
Exactly. The PFTs are going to be a variety of different tests, and your pulmonologist will help pick which ones you need, based on your symptoms. And these tests will provide us with a lot of information in terms of your breathing capacity, how much air you can take in, how much air you can blow out, how is the oxygen crossing that barrier where you oxygenate the blood. And from these PFTs, we can see if you have something like an obstructive disease, like COPD, where you are having what they call air trapping. You can breathe in, but you can't really breathe out well. Or like a restrictive lung disease, where think of it as like your lungs are having a much difficult time expanding. So you can blow out the air, but you can't really take a deep breath in. It's the opposite of it, And so each of these specific conditions requires us to test your PFTs and see which category you fall into. As basics as asthma, that's how you would actually diagnose asthma, is through PFTs and seeing, hey, how does my lung react to a allergen? And how does it react after I give it a certain treatment? And looking into the details of that.
Okay. All right, fantastic. So, as we wrap up this episode, is there any takeaway message? If there was one thing you would want a viewer or listener to take away from this episode, what would that be?
So shortness of breath can be a very serious symptom. And, it's not one of those that you want to keep throwing in the back corner and ignoring, So if you feel it's something that is getting worse, or it's just been a long time it's been going on, or you find yourself like your patient where you're now purposefully not parking far away or not avoiding stairs or anything like that, if you're any of those kinds of situations, you want to get tested.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Khan.
Absolutely.
This has been the Daily Brief. I will see you next episode. This has been the Daily Brief. Medicine is not about certainty. It is about responsibility. Decisions are often made with incomplete information, but they are always made with your safety in mind. In a system that can feel rushed and fragmented, you deserve clarity, continuity, and an advocate who sees the whole picture. I am Dr. Albert Takem, your physician ally, high-level science, human-level care. I will see you at the next briefing, or I will see you in the clinic.